Hello! This video is about how to solve a system of linear equations using elimination, specifically when one set of coefficients are opposites. This is like the easiest of the solving by eliminations types of problems. So first, just a little review. Like you probably remember that you can add vertically or horizontally. So I could also say 3 plus 2 equals 5 and write it horizontally like this. And if I wanted to combine these two equations, 3 plus 2 and 4 plus negative 1, I could write it out horizontally like this. 3 plus 2 plus 4 plus negative 1. Here's one of the equations, or expressions, here's the other expression, and I'm combining them, I'm adding them together. And I can solve that by doing it in bits and pieces in whatever order I want because it's addition, and that equals 8. One way we don't often see this combining of expressions is vertically, but we could do it that way too. So I can take the 3 plus 2 and write it horizontally, and I can take the 4 plus negative 1 and write that horizontally. So here is the first equation or expression that I had. Here is the second expression that I had. And I can add them like piece by piece. 3 plus 4 is 7. 2 plus negative 1 is positive 1. 7 plus 1 is 8. So I get the same answer either way. We're going to use this idea, but throw in some variables. So let's say the two equations we're working with are x plus y equals 12 and x minus y equals negative 2. I'm going to rewrite them so that they're above each other, like this one was. So I'm just going to take this one and write it over here. X minus y equals negative 2. And this works best when the x's and the y's are in the same order. So like x lines up below x and y lines up below y. And I want to combine these two equations. So just like we did out here, where I just kind of looked at each piece vertically, and I did this 3 plus 4 equals 7, and I did this 2 plus negative 1 equals 1, we can do that here too. So x plus x, I'm going to look at that first. That's 1x plus 1 more x. That makes 2x. This y, positive y minus y, that's like 1y minus 1y is 0. So I'm not even going to write anything there. That kind of cancels out. And I bring the equal sign down. 12 minus 2 is 10. So one thing that kind of trips people up sometimes is that I did 12 minus 2, and they might say, well, in here too, I did 12 minus y, but I did x plus x here. So how do you know if you're adding or subtracting? You'd put a plus sign here. Doesn't that mean you should add everything? Well, remember that adding a negative and subtracting will give you the same result. So I could have said y plus negative y equals nothing, 0. And I could have said 12 plus negative 2 equals 10. Plus a negative, adding a negative to me is more complicated than just subtracting. So I like to just use whatever sign is given. If this were a negative x, I would have subtracted x instead of added them. I hope that that's clear. So you're just kind of using whatever sign you're given to either add or subtract. So now I have an equation that I can solve because I'm familiar with solving one-step equations. So I know that this is 2 times x, and to get x, to isolate the variable, get x by itself, I have to undo that multiplication by dividing. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So x equals 5. But I'm not done yet because that only tells me one of my variables. It tells me x. So x in both of these equations, back to our original equations, x would equal 5. But we don't know what y is yet. So I'm going to take the 5 and I can put it in place of x in either of these two equations. For this video, I'm going to put it in place of both just to prove that it doesn't matter which one you put it in, but you would just choose one. So I'll start with the first one here, which was x plus y equals 12. So we said that x equals 5. So I'm going to take this 5 and substitute it for the x. 5 plus y equals 12. And you probably can tell just by looking at that or by using algebra that y is going to equal 7. If I had put the other equation, if I had used x minus y equals -2, I would have done the same thing. Take the 5, put it in place of the x, so 5 minus y equals -2. Let's see, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. I get -y equals -7, which means that positive y would equal +7. So in either case, I got 7. I like to just look and see which one seems simpler to solve. Personally, I like to avoid negative numbers, so with this subtraction and the negative, I probably would have chosen the first equation, but that's really just a matter of personal preference. So then how do you write the answer? The answer is the point 5, 7. And we usually put it in brackets to show that it's the solution to a set of equations. Some people can't draw these brackets, and so they just do like these square kind to indicate that the solution to that system was 5, 7. Because remember, the whole point of this, if we go back to what we did when we were graphing, we want to find the one point where these two lines would cross each other on the graph. And so this is that point. If I were to graph these two equations, they would cross at 5, 7. You know, that would be where they were. I don't know what these lines would look like, but whatever, they would cross at that particular point. Okay, I hope that's helpful.